listening to Heroes Initiative.
Welcome back to Heroes Initiative podcast. I'm here with Zoe and Miriam again, and we're continuing our conversation about what it's been like on their mission trips to Chula and Augusta, Georgia. On that note, I would just like to ask, what is one overarching thing that you learned about God's character on this trip? Because I know on these trips, just talking to various people, they learned so much. There is so much that God will reveal about himself through these trips. So I just want to hear your perspectives.
Yeah, there are several takeaways, I guess you could call it, from that I had from the trip. One big thing was the pastor of the church, First Baptist Chula, had a sermon that Sunday, right before the camp started, talking about Christ, childlike faith, and just the importance of children ministry, and how one thing in particular he said was, children are not just to be endured, their souls count just as much. And so just the fact that we're also called to be Christ's children, and just the different parallels of children are fully dependent on someone else, they're just liabilities, they got nothing they can bring and offer, but that's how we're supposed to come to Christ, is be fully dependent on him, because there's nothing we can bring to the table. So that was one big thing. And also one it was kind of a small little thing, I think, that the campus minister, Miss Penny, had mentioned in one of our devotions, but it stood out to me so much that I still think about it, is if you're fitting in, you're not standing out for Christ, because we were talking about how people should be able to notice a difference in us, and what that means, and just in our lives, even if they don't necessarily know oh, this person's a Christian, they should be able to look at the way we live our lives and see a difference. And if they don't, maybe you should do some praying and figuring out why that is, why people don't notice a difference. And so, but the way Miss Penny had summarized it was, if you're fitting in, you're not standing out for Christ. And so that's one thing that's kind of been on my heart and been on my mind for a while. So
something that I noticed was, I think when I got there, it was super easy to think, oh, this is just a random group of people, we're all super different and we have nothing in common and we're just coming together and doing this trip. But I think I started to realize over the 2 weeks that God was super intentional with, and it's so silly of me for not, knowing this going in, but he was so intentional with all the people that he handpicked to be on that trip. And just seeing kind of I was talking about how the campus minister's godson joined us, and how we basically, he definitely was more of a kind of standoffish, not quickly to just become friends with people, but we really bonded with him. And I think part of that was because of some of the things that were some of the things that characterize the people in our group. He was able to bond with them right away, and just small things like that, and different things that different people had in common was just kind of mind-blowing, I guess. And how we were all, it was we were a unified group by the end of the first couple weeks. And so that was really cool to see, and how God used all of us to grow each other too. And there are definitely people that came on that trip that were realizing that they didn't, that God was not a priority for them going into the trip, and wanting to change everything, leaving and going home. And that was so cool. And part of that was because of who was on the trip, and God using that to grow those people. And then the other thing I was going to say is just seeing how God is so in control and so radically changes people. I know I've talked about this before, but watching him change all of the people on the trip, from the campus minister or from the leader's godson to every single one of us, including me, just coming in to the trip thinking, I'm just taking a break from work and I'm going to go right back to work, but instead realizing Christ is everything, and we need to be serving and sharing this, and how can I take this back to work with me, to one of the people on the trip who realized, like I was saying, that she wanted to reprioritize everything around God when she was coming back into school. Just seeing that he changes people completely, and it's so cool and awesome and beautiful to get to see that he's powerful to do that, and kind and gracious to do that too. So yeah, that's what I kind of learned.
Going off of what you were saying, Miriam, how we need to have a childlike faith and how we need to be sort of realizing that we bring absolutely nothing to the table. That just makes me think of Ephesians 2. I've really been digesting that these past couple of weeks, and it just says that we are his workmanship, and it's by grace through faith alone that we are saved by Christ, which is just so awesome. Like, we cannot boast in anything that we do because it's him who is saving us, you know? So thinking about that in respect to the mission trips, how do you cope with that? How do you think about that in your mind? Because you're on these mission trips to serve and to work for the Lord, but eventually these works aren't going to save you. So how do you deal with that?
One thing during the sermon that the pastor had mentioned that Sunday right before the camp was that, like, we the volunteers, we the people who had come, you know, from like around, you know, even out of state, who came to serve at that camp, we didn't come just to, you know, serve these children, but to reach them and to share the gospel to them. And so kind of reprioritizing mindset of, like, it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm going to do the best activity, you know, I'm going to be so organized, I'm going to, you know, do a lot of things in my own strength, but that it's just like through Christ, you know, just like loving on the kids, like loving on my teammates, you know, just doing, being open to whatever the Lord was like calling me to. And so, yeah, just, it helped just having the right mindset and prioritizing and knowing that it wasn't my own strength.
I guess what comes to mind is just that, like, even when we are doing these works and all of this, and walking with the Lord, like, you just realize again and again that you are insufficient and that you don't really have anything that you can give God. And that's just part of sanctification, I think, just realizing again and again how broken you are. So I don't know, just in all of that, coming to him, and he's the one who gives us joy, and it's just such a long and messy process, but watching him do all these works in the midst of that, and watching him, you know, change people on our trips and work through people, and having the chance to talk about, like, have good conversations and share the gospel with people, is just so beautiful in the midst of all of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really just wanted to hear all of your input, especially because that's something I've been thinking about as the Send Me Now application is coming up. Just how is it that we are applying to go on these mission trips, but we are not even capable of doing it without God's strength to pull us through? So I would say that that's like a big thing I would want to just remind others of, remind myself of as I'm going into this. But what about you guys? What is a reminder that you guys have to share for people who are thinking of applying to Send Me Now missions?
Kind of jumping off of what you said, I don't know if this is directly the question you were just asking, but in terms of, like, thinking about, like, doing something for the summer and, like, knowing you can only do it through the Lord's strength, I actually was pretty concerned with some of the different mission, like, opportunities, because like, medically, I'm not very good with, like, exerting a lot of energy, like, consistently without, like, decent rest in between. And some of the mission trips were, like, going, you know, to a different country and, you know, hiking potentially multiple miles a day, like, to and from villages. And I was like, that's fantastic. I don't think physically, like, medically I can handle that. And, like, some were, like, you know, doing, like, labor construction, you know, which is, again, fantastic. But I was like, I don't think I can, I was like, I can't do that. And so, like, being, like, I don't know, I would get, like, wrapped up in being like, oh, I can't do this. Like, I'd be, like, my own limitations. And even with this summer camp, I was, like, kind of concerned. I was like, that's a lot of kids, you know. Like, it was about, like, early in the morning to, like, in the middle of the afternoon. I was like, that's going to be, like, a lot of time. I was concerned that I was going to get, like, worn out, like, by day 2 or something. But one, like, kind of big takeaway is, like, I wasn't tired, or I'm also narcoleptic, so I also sleep a lot. I had a hard time staying awake. I wasn't, like, tired or sleepy the entire week, which, like, doesn't happen, basically. Like, that's just not a thing that happens. And so, like, the entire week I didn't have a time when I was, like, you know, fighting super hard to stay awake, you know, and stay focused, or, you know, like, you know, being too tired to, like, help someone. Like, I didn't have that at all, which, again, like, it might sound weird, but, like, that doesn't happen. Even on, like, a normal chill week, I get tired and sleepy. So, just, like, being able to see really clearly, it's like, oh, it's because, like, the Lord was strengthening me throughout the week so I could do what I needed to do. So that was really, really cool. So just knowing that, like, the Lord will place me only in places he knows I can handle. And if I can't handle it, he'll like handle it through me, if that makes sense. So yeah, don't be too scared to sign up.
So I guess a reminder that I would want to tell people is it's not about you. I guess it's about this crazy big story that God is all putting together. So I don't know. I would just say don't underestimate. I feel like all of my thoughts are really jumbled, but don't underestimate all that God can do, which is honestly what we all do when we go on these trips, and definitely what I did, not expecting how he was going to grow and change and work in all of our lives. But yeah, it's about, I guess, something bigger than that. And so I think it's really important to go on these trips because you're in a place where you have to look to, I guess, God and not yourself, if that makes sense, and look to people who are in need. Maybe if you're going to another country and seeing, these people living in a village who have so much less than you, yet they have so much more joy, how is that possible? I think it's a really, really good idea. And I saying in all of this that it's not like just about you, it's about serving God. It also is crazy how much work, like you think that you're going to serve these people, but in all reality, like God is using these people to like change and grow you, which is really cool as well. So I definitely think it is something that, like, going on these trips is something that everybody should definitely do.
So I have another question for you guys. How can we as a BCM, we as listeners of this podcast and anyone who this may reach, how can we be praying about the places that you went to and the people that you may have served?
Definitely prayers for the children who are at the camp. There were some who accepted Christ for the first time, so it's very exciting. So definitely be praying for them, but as well as just like all the kids and all like the seeds that were planted, and that they would continue to grow and like get to know about Christ. As well as this is about, I think this might have been the 6th year that they've done the Camp Chula. I don't remember the exact year, but it's an annual thing that they've been doing, and it's getting a little bit of like known, and fame is a weird word for it, but like it's reaching farther and farther. So just prayers that they're able to get the volunteers they need to be able to accommodate as many kids as are able to come each year. So I know they're already like hard at work planning for next year, so just prayers that they're able to keep it up.
So yeah, I think a way that you can be praying for some of the people that we served on our trip, I guess the first couple of people who come to mind were the Augusta city missionary. His name is Dwayne Boudreau. I'm probably said that wrong, but he just pours into so many people. I think he's involved with 60 churches in the area, and he got to pour into us a lot, and we learned a lot from him. But I know that there's a lot of people who are growing so much because of him, who are just knowing the name of Christ because of him. He's so bold and passionate for what he does, and one of the people who I guess works at the missions lab that we were staying at, his name is Mr. David. So for him as well, and just the work that they're both doing. And then one of the churches that we got to serve, I don't remember the name of the church off the top of my head, but it's the one that I talked about earlier, and just that God continues to encourage them in just their whole body, and at the pastor especially, that he keeps building them up and just I guess not leaving them discouraged, kind of like how we saw them a little bit at the beginning of the week that we served them. Yeah.
So as we wrap up this podcast, do you guys have any final thoughts, any final words that you'd like to tell to our audience?
Sign up for Send Me Now. It is a great opportunity, and the Lord can definitely use you if you are willing.
If you are unsure if you want to sign up, I would just say go ahead and sign up. Just do it. It definitely will be worth it, and it's not necessarily a surefire. If you apply, you don't have to go necessarily, so it's better to have the opportunity to go.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in, listening to our podcast, and watching our video. We really encourage you to sign up for Send Me Now. The deadline is Wednesday, November 3rd. And thank you, Zoe and Miriam, for being on here. It was such a pleasure and so good to hear about these experiences from you guys. So really awesome. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to Heroes Initiative.